Marlon Brando, the mere mention of his name, evokes a sense of awe in film lovers around the world. Have you ever wondered how one actor managed to transform the very nature of screen acting, turning it into a raw, deeply personal art form? During an era when Hollywood heroes were polished and mannered, Brando stunned audiences with a style that felt real, visceral, and often unpredictable. He brought an undercurrent of vulnerability to his characters, whether he was commanding respect as a mafia patriarch or baring his soul on the docks. Simply put, Brando reshaped cinematic acting forever, and his influence can still be felt in nearly every generation of performers who followed. In this countdown, we'll be exploring the 10 best movies of Marlon Brando. Each film is a testament to his range, dedication, and the sheer magnetic quality that made him a legend. From groundbreaking dramas to iconic musicals, you're about to discover, or rediscover, why Brando remains one of the most revered names in Hollywood. The Godfather, let's begin with what many consider not just Marlon Brando's best film, but one of the greatest movies of all time, The Godfather. Directed by Francis Ford Coppola and released in 1972, this epic crime drama sees Brando in the role of Vito Corleone, the Don of the Corleone family. Have you ever found yourself so captivated by a performance that you almost forget you're watching an actor at all? That's precisely what happens when Brando steps onto the screen with his raspy voice, subtly sagging jowls, and an air of paternal authority. The unforgettable portrayal blends compassion for family with ruthless cunning, creating a character both terrifying and oddly comforting. Brando won the Best Actor Oscar for his portrayal, although in a moment of controversy, he famously sent Sachin Littlefeather to reject the award on his behalf, drawing attention to the portrayal of Native Americans in film. Critics and audiences alike were mesmerized by Brando's masterful transformation into a quiet yet omnipresent force, setting the bar for method acting at its finest. Underneath the film's violence and power struggles, The Godfather is a story about family and legacy, and it's Brando's gravitas that holds everything together. Even decades later, Don Vito Corleone remains an archetype for the thoughtful yet ruthless patriarch, and Brando's influence in pop culture, from parodies to tributes, remains unprecedented. If you're new to Brando, this film is the perfect place to start. It's a performance that redefined screen acting and set a gold standard that actors still chase today. A Streetcar named Desire next on our list is the role that put Marlon Brando on the map. Stanley Kowalski in Elia Kazan's 1951 adaptation of Tennessee Williams's A Streetcar Named Desire. Brando had already portrayed Stanley on Broadway, so it's no surprise that his transition to film earned him massive acclaim. Have you ever caught yourself thinking about how raw human emotion can become explosive on screen? That's exactly the kind of searing energy Brando delivers here. Starring opposite Vivien Leigh as the fragile Blanche Dubois, Brando's portrayal of Stanley is both brutish and magnetic, a volatile mix of primal aggression and wounded pride. One of the film's most famous moments, the scene where Stanley stands beneath Stella's window, shouting her name, became a cultural milestone, often parodied but never duplicated. What makes Brando's performance so groundbreaking is his use of method acting. Rather than approaching Stanley as a polished Hollywood hero, Brando embodied the sweaty, working-class aggression and physicality of the character. Audiences and critics were shocked and captivated by how different his style was compared to anything they'd seen before. A Streetcar named Desire paved the way for a new kind of realism in cinema, and Brando became the poster child for a generation of actors who placed raw emotion above traditional technique. If you've ever wondered how Marlon Brando started his meteoric rise, look no further than his unforgettable turn as Stanley Kowalski. On the Waterfront, when we talk about iconic Brando roles, it's impossible to skip On the Waterfront. Released in 1954 and directed by Elia Kazan, this film won 8 Academy Awards, including Best Actor for Brando's portrayal of Terry Malloy, a former boxer turned dock worker. Ever hear the line, "I could have been a contender"? It's one of the most famous pieces of movie dialogue ever, and it perfectly captures Terry's regret and longing for redemption. Brando's heartfelt delivery of that line still resonates decades later, reminding us of the pain inherent in missed opportunities. Critics lauded On the Waterfront as a shining example of method acting at its pinnacle. The grittiness of the dockside setting, the corruption of the local unions, and Terry's moral awakening all come together in an intensely human story. Brando fully inhabited the role of a rough-around-the-edges brawler who's torn between loyalty to his brother and a growing need to stand up for what's right. The emotional weight of the film rests heavily on his shoulders, and he carries it effortlessly. Many fans were amazed to discover how much of Terry's naturalistic, mumbling style was a deliberate choice by Brando to add authenticity and depth to the character. The result is a performance that redefined screen acting by proving that subtle choices, slumped posture, carefully chosen pauses, can create monumental emotional impact. On the Waterfront is a masterpiece by any measure, and if you haven't experienced it yet, Brando's career-defining role is reason enough to watch. Apocalypse. Now fast forward to 1979, when Marlon Brando once again teamed up with Francis Ford Coppola for Apocalypse Now, a film that took audiences deep into the heart of darkness, both literally and figuratively. In this Vietnam War epic, loosely inspired by Joseph Conrad's novella Heart of Darkness, Brando plays Colonel Walter E. Kurtz, a mysterious and godlike figure who's gone rogue in the jungle. Have you ever been drawn in by a character who barely appears on screen, yet dominates the entire narrative? That's the power Brando exerts in this film, even though his screen time is relatively brief. By the time Captain Willard, Martin Sheen, and his crew finally encounter Kurtz, the story has built him up to almost mythical proportions. Brando's entrance is visually striking and unsettling. His shaved head, his often shadowed face, and his cryptic monologues all contribute to an atmosphere of suffocating tension. The production of Apocalypse Now infamously faced numerous challenges, including Brando arriving on set overweight and unprepared, leading Coppola to shoot him mostly in darkness. Yet out of chaos emerged one of cinema's most haunting performances. Kurtz's musings on war, morality, and the human condition lend the film an existential weight that lingers long after the credits roll. Brando's ability to harness mystery and stillness rather than loud theatrics proves how versatile he could be even under extremely difficult shooting conditions. Apocalypse Now is more than just a war movie. It's a descent into the darkest corners of the human psyche, and Brando's haunting portrayal of Kurtz is crucial to making that journey unforgettable. Last Tango in Paris. For our fifth pick, we come to one of Brando's most controversial roles, Last Tango in Paris, released in 1972 and directed by Bernardo Bertolucci. This erotic drama centers on Paul, Brando, a grieving American in Paris who starts an anonymous affair with a young French woman, Jean Maria Schneider. Have you ever stumbled upon a film so raw and intimate that it makes you uncomfortable? That's precisely the emotional territory Last Tango in Paris inhabits. The film dives headfirst into themes of loneliness, grief, and sexual exploration, challenging audiences with its explicitness and emotional intensity. Brando's performance is a testament to his fearless commitment as an actor. Paul's anguish over his wife's recent death morphs into anger, desperation, and a desire for absolute detachment from identity. In many scenes, the dialogue feels almost improvised, adding to the film's sense of uncomfortable authenticity. However, it's worth noting that the film's production has come under scrutiny in later years. Maria Schneider revealed she felt manipulated and mistreated during filming, and this has led many to reevaluate the movie from a modern ethical standpoint. Nevertheless, from a purely cinematic perspective, Last Tango in Paris remains a major milestone in Brando's career, displaying his ability to portray the darkest corners of human emotion without flinching. If you choose to watch it, be aware of its explicit nature and the ethical conversations that continue to surround it. It's a performance that pushes boundaries and reaffirms Brando's reputation as one of the most fearless actors of his generation. Julius Caesar Marlon Brando wasn't just about modern realism, he could also handle the classics, as evidenced by his role as Mark Antony in Joseph L. Mankiewicz's 1953 adaptation of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. Many fans were amazed to discover that beneath the gritty method actor persona, Brando possessed impeccable diction and a genuine respect for the bard. Have you ever questioned whether an actor known for mumbling and improvisation could convincingly deliver Shakespeare's lines? Julius Caesar lays that doubt to rest. Brando's performance as Mark Antony is most memorable for his stirring funeral oration following Caesar's assassination. With deliberate pacing and carefully modulated emotion, Brando renders Shakespeare's language not as lofty poetry, but as urgent political rhetoric. Critics at the time hailed his transition to classical theater as a triumph, proving his range was far greater than the blue-collar roles that had catapulted him to fame. The film itself boasts an all-star cast, including James Mason as Brutus and John Gielgud as Cassius, lending the production a weighty gravitas. But it's Brando's rousing monologue, "Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears," that electrifies the screen and underscores the power of performance to sway crowds. Julius Caesar remains a prime example of how Brando could leap from steamy contemporary drama to timeless Shakespearean tragedy without missing a beat. The Wild One next. Let's rev up the engines for The Wild One, released in 1953 and directed by Laszlo Benedek. In this quintessential outlaw biker film, Brando plays Johnny Strabler, the leader of a motorcycle gang that invades a quiet town, leaving residents unsettled and the local authorities overwhelmed. Ever wonder how the image of the rebellious biker in a leather jacket became a pop culture staple? You can thank The Wild One for that. Clad in his iconic cap, leather jacket, and a perpetual sneer, Brando's Johnny is the epitome of post-war youth alienation and anti-establishment cool. One of the film's most quoted lines comes when a local asks Johnny, "What are you rebelling against?" And he responds with a nonchalant, "What have you got?" That short exchange captures the spirit of an entire generation that was beginning to question authority, conformity, and the American dream. Brando's portrayal of Johnny laid the groundwork for countless bad boy characters to follow, influencing everyone from James Dean to modern anti-heroes. Although somewhat tame by today's standards, the film was considered scandalous in its time, prompting discussions about juvenile delinquency and moral decay. For Brando, The Wild One helped solidify his status as a cultural icon of youthful rebellion, further expanding his repertoire beyond stage adaptations and dramatic roles. If you're looking to witness the birth of the Hollywood rebel archetype, this film is required viewing. Viva Zapata. In 1952's Viva Zapata, directed by Elia Kazan and penned by John Steinbeck, Brando took on the role of Emiliano Zapata, a real-life Mexican revolutionary who fought for agrarian reform. This biographical film stands out as an ambitious and politically charged project focusing on the complexities of revolutionary leadership and personal sacrifice. It might surprise you to learn that Brando, an actor of European descent, was cast in the role of a Mexican revolutionary, a choice that would spark debates on cultural representation today. However, Brando's commitment to authenticity is evident in his immersive portrayal. Have you ever considered how an actor's physical transformation can convey an entire life's worth of struggle and perseverance? Brando's subtle approach in Viva Zapata captures Zapata's humility, leadership qualities, and eventual disillusionment. The film depicts Zapata as both a hero and a fallible man, grappling with the harsh realities of maintaining a revolution. Critics lauded Brando's sincere, understated acting as he balanced fiery charisma with a surprising gentleness. His interactions with Anthony Quinn, who won an Oscar for portraying Zapata's brother Eufemio, further elevate the film's emotional stakes. Although sometimes overshadowed by Brando's more famous works, Viva Zapata remains a significant milestone demonstrating his capacity to tackle historical roles and complex political themes with a genuine sense of empathy. Mutiny on the Bounty Adventures on the High Seas await us in 1962's Mutiny on the Bounty, directed by Louis Milestone. Here, Brando stars as First Officer Fletcher Christian, who leads a rebellion against the tyrannical Captain Bligh, Trevor Howard, during a voyage to transport breadfruit plants. This adaptation of a classic maritime tale was famously plagued by budget overruns, production delays, and on-set drama, some of which was attributed to Brando's own creative conflicts with the director. Have you ever watched a movie where the behind-the-scenes stories are as legendary as the film itself? Mutiny on the Bounty certainly fits that description. Despite the off-camera chaos, Brando delivers a complex portrayal of Fletcher Christian, far different from the straight-arrow version played by Clark Gable in the 1935 original. Brando's Christian is introspective and tortured, caught between the desire for discipline aboard a ship and the moral imperative to challenge a ruthless captain. While the film received mixed critical responses upon release, some praising its lavish production values, others bemoaning its departures from historical accuracy, it has since found appreciation for its sweeping cinematography and Brando's unique interpretation of a conflicted leader. Though it may not rank among the most critically acclaimed entries in Brando's filmography, Mutiny on the Bounty adds another facet to his legacy, showcasing his willingness to take risks and push boundaries, even when it landed him in the midst of controversy. 10. Guys and Dolls. Finally, we shift gears to a lighter note with Guys and Dolls, a 1955 musical directed by Joseph L. Mankiewicz and based on the works of Damon Runyon. Yes, you read that correctly. Marlon Brando starred in a big Hollywood musical, sharing the screen with Frank Sinatra and Gene Simmons. If you've ever been curious about seeing Brando sing and dance, here's your chance. In Guys and Dolls, he plays Sky Masterson, a suave gambler who falls for a straight-laced missionary, setting off a comedic series of bets, counter-bets, and romantic entanglements. Brando's involvement in a musical was a surprise for audiences used to his intense dramatic roles. Although he wasn't a trained singer, he tackled the musical numbers with charm and commitment. His chemistry with co-star Gene Simmons as the prim but willing Sarah Brown adds a tender layer to the film's breezy, colorful world of dice games and dance numbers. Although Sinatra's powerhouse vocals often steal the show, there's an undeniable fun in watching Brando step out of his comfort zone to play a romantic lead in a mainstream musical. Though Guys and Dolls might not showcase the raw method intensity that made him famous, it proves that Brando's versatility knew few limits. It's a delightful detour in a filmography otherwise dominated by gritty realism and boundary-pushing roles. Which Marlon Brando film stands out most in your memory, and what scene left you speechless? Are there any hidden gems you think should have made this top 10 list? Let's keep the conversation going. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more captivating movie discussions, countdowns, and behind-the-scenes insights. Thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned for our next deep dive into the legendary icons of cinema.